Thank you, Mr. President. Because I know that Hungarian citizens usually listen to these debates, I will start with some words in Hungarian.
The Union is founded on the values of respect for human dignity, freedom, democracy, equality, the rule of law, and respect for human rights, including the rights of persons belonging to minorities.
These words, my friends, dear President, Prime Minister, are the words in our Article 2 of the Treaty on the European Union. The Union is founded upon the values of respect for human dignity, the rule of law, democracy, liberty, equality, fundamental rights, the rights of people coming from minorities. These words are not a bureaucratic invention, these words are not an imposition, these words are the choice of our member states. Hungary, in particular, not only signed these words, Hungary wrote these words with other member states. So the question for our debate here today is, do we take these words seriously or not? In the European Parliament, we take them very seriously. We have done work for over a year on over 500 changes into Hungarian law by the government that touch all cornerstones of democracy. The Parliament, the media, the judiciary, the electoral law, the Supreme Court, the Constitutional Court, Data Protection Authority. The Constitution alone was changed 12 times, then a new Constitution was made, then 4 changes to this Constitution in 1 year. Not only the pace and the scope of the changes were unusual, but the general trend is a trend of concentration of power towards the majority and the government. Many international institutions, including EU and Council of Europe, have expressed their concerns on this. Of course, democracy is about the rule of majority, but democracy is not majoritarianism, meaning that in a democracy you have to respect separation of powers, independence of the judiciary and fundamental rights. We have had a permanent dialogue with the government of Hungary. We have updated our working documents that we have written with all the political groups, also with the comments by the government of Hungary. And this is also a dialogue that we want to go on after this report is approved. We reach a very important conclusion in this report, that the changes in Hungary have been systemic, that they have a general trend, and this general trend moves away from the values in Article 2. Now, this is a very serious conclusion, and one that needs to be taken seriously by all institutions concerned. By us, by the European Commission, to whom we ask a rule of law mechanism and an Article 2 alarm agenda to deal with this, by the Hungarian government, to whom we address 30 general recommendations for the future that, of course, they will follow with their own timetable objectives, and in a dialogue, or let's say a trilogue with the 3 institutions. We also ask for an Article 2 trilogue with the Council of Europe, with the European Council, or the Council of the EU. Furthermore, we acknowledge that as a political institution, the European Parliament should be compensated by a non-political body that we could turn to. This we call the Copenhagen High-Level Group, in order to ensure the continuity of the Copenhagen criteria. This means that, of course, we are very demanding in the exigencies that we make to candidate countries, but that we have to ensure that we apply the same standards to ourselves. Let me make very clear what this is not about. Europe is a diverse place. It has republics and monarchies, federal and unitary states, unicameral and bicameral. All this is possible within compatibility with the values of democracy in the treaties. We not only respect this diversity, we cherish this diversity. But what concerns us is if these values are compatible, or if these changes are compatible or not with our values. These values, the European Parliament has to be here to defend, to protect and to respect, because Europe is not only a club of democracies, we are also a union of democracy. Thank you very much. Köszönöm szépen.
President, Prime Minister Orbán, honourable members. Today we are discussing a parliamentary report on a subject which the Commission is following with the utmost attention. And let me then start by thanking the rapporteur, Rui Tavares. Protecting the values and principles on which the European Union is founded is a matter of fundamental importance. In April, the Commission already explained to this House the approach that we have taken as regards the recent evolution of the Hungarian constitutional system. I would like to start by providing you with an update on the Commission's actions in this respect. The Commission expressed concerns about the conformity of the Fourth Amendment to the Hungarian Fundamental Law, which was adopted on 11 March, both with European Union law and with the rule of law principle. I have raised these concerns directly and repeatedly with the Prime Minister, Viktor Orbán, in my contacts with him and in formal letters sent to him. I have also worked closely, very closely indeed, with Secretary General Jagland of the Council of Europe. We have together identified from the beginning of the process the main concerns and we have fully shared them. We have smoothly acted, each of us, under the remit of our competences and ensured close cooperation and exchange of information. In this context, the Commission has played a very active role as the guardian of the treaties. After a detailed analysis of the Fourth Amendment to the Hungarian Fundamental Law, the Commission identified 3 issues where the compatibility with European Union law is at stake. First, the ad hoc tax for European Court of Justice judgments entailing payment obligations. Second, the regime for transfers of cases between courts. And third, the restrictions on publication of political advertisements, namely during European Parliament election campaigns. In order to address these concerns, the Hungarian authorities have offered solutions for the first 2 issues by proposing changes to the fundamental law and implementing legislation. In particular, the Hungarian authorities propose to remove the present clause on the European Court of Justice judgments entailing payment obligations from the fundamental law, and to abolish the system of transfer of cases between courts from the Hungarian legal system, including from the fundamental law. The Commission welcomes these announcements made by the Hungarian authorities. We will monitor the concrete implementing steps which must be taken by the Hungarian Parliament in order to effectively remove the existing concerns on these 2 points, including the necessary changes at the constitutional level which are expected to be voted upon after this summer. On the restrictions of political advertisements, namely during European Parliament election campaigns, contacts are still ongoing between the Commission and the Hungarian authorities to find a satisfactory solution in line with EU law well in time before the start of the next electoral campaign. On 28 June, last Friday, Prime Minister Orbán sent me a letter indicating the readiness of the Hungarian government to address the Commission's concerns. I welcome this recent information. Let me assure this House that the Commission, as guardian of the treaties, will continue to ensure that legislation and, in the Hungarian case, the fundamental law of the state is made compatible with EU law where necessary. We have showed all our diligence, as we did it last year when we launched 2 infringement cases against Hungary. One of them, concerning the early retirement age for judges, was confirmed in November 2012 by the European Court of Justice by declaring the related Hungarian legislation incompatible with European Union law. The Commission is currently monitoring the application of the new law and is verifying that the reinstatements of dismissed judges are being carried out as announced. A second case concerns the violation of the independence of the Data Protection Authority and is pending before the court. Here again, the Hungarian authorities and Prime Minister Orbán personally have committed to respect the ruling of the European Court of Justice. All these actions have given proof and evidence of the Commission action and priority given to our role as guardian of the treaties. These decisions are part of the determined effort of the Commission to ensure the full respect of European Union law by all Member States. And they have been efficient. The Hungarian authorities have committed to change their fundamental law in order to make it fully compatible with European Union law. But we all know that other issues are at stake, which go beyond European Union law. And this is why the Commission has always made clear to the Hungarian authorities the need to work and give appropriate answers to these other issues. On the 17th of June, the Venice Commission issued its opinion on the Fourth Amendment to the Hungarian Fundamental Law. The opinion of the Venice Commission confirmed our concerns as regards the compatibility of the Fourth Amendment with the rule of law. We expect that the Hungarian authorities will take due account of this important opinion and address it in full accordance with both European Union and Council of Europe principles, rules and values. The Commission has also taken note of the fact that the Parliamentary Assembly of the Council of Europe decided last 25th of June 2013 not to open the so-called monitoring procedure on Hungary. It has adopted a resolution urging the Hungarian authorities, in close cooperation with the Venice Commission, to fully address the concerns and implement the recommendations contained in the Venice Commission's opinion. The Commission has been following with great interest the work of the Parliament in the Tavares report as adopted by the LIBE Committee. I have asked from the beginning the Hungarian authorities to engage in a political dialogue with the European Parliament in order to address the recommendations of the resolution you will vote tomorrow. I think the presence among us today of Prime Minister Orbán is precisely a way of manifesting its willingness to engage in such a dialogue with the Parliament. The European Parliament resolution touches upon issues concerning the rule of law in the European Union, and this is an issue of high importance to the Commission. This is a fundamental question for the Union, which requires that all European Union institutions, Member States and other stakeholders engage in a constructive dialogue on this matter. In my State of the Union speech here in Parliament last September, I explicitly called for a better developed set of instruments to address threats to our fundamental values, the rule of law and democracy. The Commission will perform its reflection in the next months to come, and we will inform and discuss it with this House well in time before the next European elections. It seems clear already at this stage that any initiative in this matter should bring real added value and be able to effectively address systemic and significant threats to the legal and democratic fabric in Member States going against the common European values referred to in Article 2 of the Treaty of the European Union. We also consider that we need to gather together the experience we have from a number of initiatives that are already ongoing. These initiatives include, first of all, the European Union Justice Scoreboard, presented in March, which is a tool designed as part of the European semester process to promote effective, independent, high-quality justice systems in Europe. In addition to this, the Cooperation and Verification Mechanism for Romania and Bulgaria is another instrument from which general lessons can be drawn. The upcoming anti-corruption report will also need to be taken into account in this reflection. And finally, the Commission is also following closely the situation of freedom of speech and media in Member States. We should not forget that an independent and well-performing judiciary is also of greatest economic relevance in terms of legal certainty and investor confidence. This is why the country-specific recommendations in the context of the European semester also included recommendations for certain Member States to take measures to improve and strengthen their justice system. Besides the European semester process, judicial reforms are also part of the economic adjustment programmes. We need to establish how to reinforce our capacity to better address concerns about the rule of law in Member States. We also should think about ways to prevent situations raising concerns from occurring at all. President, Prime Minister, honourable members, the Commission is convinced that the respect of the rule of law is a matter which requires that all European institutions work closely together. The Commission is determined to ensure a proper and constructive follow-up and contribution to this debate with its future reflection. I ask all Member States to demonstrate their commitment to the European Union values and principles, also by addressing the concerns of the European Parliament. We expect determination and unambiguity in doing so, in the best interest of the whole European Union and of all our citizens who want to see their rights and freedoms protected in respect of the rule of law and our common European values.
President, ladies and gentlemen, first of all, I would like to take this opportunity to pass on greetings from the citizens of Hungary to the European Parliament. I have the greatest respect also for the President of the European Commission, and I would like to thank the Commission for this open dialogue, productive dialogue, which has allowed us to resolve some of the outstanding issues. I have no illusions concerning the vote and the outcome of the vote tomorrow. I know that the Socialists, the Liberals, the Greens will vote against Hungary. And I also am aware of the fact that Hungary's friends will stand up for Hungary. I know that my words will not really change anything to that state of affairs. Nevertheless, I wanted to come before you, before this House, to take this opportunity to express something before the European Parliament, the elected representatives who sit here, to show my respect towards you. I have respect for you, and I also want to extend a hand of friendship. Because after all, this is something that brings us together. We represent the citizens who have voted us in throughout Europe. I know that many will think of Hungary in very friendly terms and with support. We have a report before us today which is very negative about Hungary. The Hungarian government has worked on these issues and is now submitting a memorandum to the President of the European Parliament to resolve these issues. The report is very unfair vis-à-vis Hungary, very unfair vis-à-vis the people of Hungary. You're applying double standards in this report. There's no recognition of certain efforts that have been made, enormous efforts that have been deployed in Hungary in order to help modernize the country. This is simply forgotten, denied. And yet Hungarians have worked so hard in order to emerge out of the crisis that we found ourselves in at the beginning of the financial crisis. We started working on this before Greece even reached this position, this status. And it was only thanks to the support also of the EU that the Hungarian economy was able to continue. Ladies and gentlemen, there are two countries so far who have emerged from the support programme. One is Hungary, in fact, because Hungary now is able to get financing from the money markets directly. And I can tell you that the Hungarian people is a people that does not want to, live on the money of other taxpayers in other countries. We are able to operate our own economy, and our public debt has reduced year after year. Now we've come out of the excessive deficit procedure. In terms of our trade balance, it is now positive. Our economy is growing. Unemployment is on the decrease in our country. The number of people in employment is also on the increase. When it comes to pensions, when it comes to the purchasing power of salaries and wages, they are also up. Therefore, we as Hungarians feel that we have done our homework now. Ladies and gentlemen, honourable members of the European Parliament, the report that is tabled before you today is a serious danger, a threat for Europe, I would say. Not so much for Hungary, because after all, Hungary, even to date, has been working, if you like, against the trend. Even here in the European Parliament, we've been swimming against the trend, we've been moving forward. But tomorrow you'll be voting on a report that really has to do with the future of Europe. In this report you have some proposals, and these proposals are not in line with the founding treaties of the Union. You're suggesting here setting up a mechanism, an institution which is not anchored in the treaties, and it would mean that member states of the European Union could find themselves under guardianship in future. This is disregarding the powers of the European Parliament. It is also disregarding the distribution of powers between the EU institutions, and it's disregarding the legal balance that needs to exist between member states and the EU institutions. And in terms of the founding treaties, you're basically setting up new criteria. They are arbitrary in nature. You're talking about new procedures, the creation of new institutions. That is what you have before you. Ladies and gentlemen, this is a very dangerous trend. I have lived through the fate of Central Europe. I know what it feels like when you can't be in power, in charge of your own situation because others outside of your country are deciding. I know what it's like to be a second-class citizen. I've witnessed this myself. I also know what it's like to have double standards imposed upon you. We have suffered through this through decades and decades. Those who had power abused their power. We know this. We, as Central Europeans, know perfectly well what it's like when national independence, national sovereignty, national liberty are denied. I was in the resistance against the communist regime, and I fought for this because I wanted to put an end to this kind of approach. I never wanted us to experience this kind of thing again. And I have come before you, therefore, to say this. We have learned from this experience. We, as Hungarians, don't want that kind of Europe, where successful countries are penalized, are punished instead of being recognized. We don't want a Europe where a two-thirds majority position is not respected, but simply denied. We don't want a kind of Europe where countries can be put under guardianship, where freedoms are restricted. And we don't want a kind of Europe where the more powerful can abuse their power. And nor do we want a kind of Europe where you have double standards being applied, where only the smaller partners have to show respect for the greater partners. So, ladies and gentlemen, we will fight for this. We will fight for this against all those who want to apply double standards, all those who want to abuse their power, and all those who want to treat us as second-class citizens. And we will also fight against all those who want to impose a kind of, empire instead of a union. We belong to those, and we know that there are many millions of people in Europe who feel the same way. We don't believe that we should have a Europe of submission. We should have a Europe of freedom. And therefore, I would very much applaud a free nation Europe. Thank you.
Esteemed members, this is not the first debate involving Hungary that's been held, and on many occasions Mr. Verhofstadt has voiced his opinion that it's not right for Prime Ministers to take the floor here in the Parliament. And I would also like to point out that here, the country which you are talking about, we've got accusations being levelled against Hungary, and there's a lot of speakers for the other side of the case. But even Stalin in the show trials gave more time to those who were being put in the dock for condemnation than has been the case in this proceeding.
Enough is enough. Mr. Szájer, you cannot compare this debate to Stalin's show trials. With the utmost respect for the level of emotion in this debate, that is unacceptable. Two things are unacceptable. Mr. Verhofstadt is emphatically one of the members of this House and one of the members of the Conference of Presidents who have encouraged me to allow heads of state and government from the European Council to address the chamber as much as possible. What you have just accused him of is quite simply not true. And I'm telling you now again, comparing a debate in this chamber on the basis of speaking time, which is based on the size of political groups, with the show trials under Stalin is a serious offence.
President, honourable members, Prime Minister, as President Barroso has recalled, the Commission has on several occasions expressed concerns directly with the Hungarian authorities about the conformity of the Hungarian laws both with Union law and with the rule of law principle. The Commission has thus actively played its role as guardian of the treaties. You recall that last year we have launched 2 infringement cases against Hungary, one concerning the forced early retirement of judges, which was confirmed by the Court of Justice, and the Hungarian Parliament has amended the law. The Commission is currently monitoring the application of the new law. The second question, which is still pending in front of the European Court of Justice, is the question on the independence of the Data Protection Authority. And this year, after a detailed analysis of the 4th Amendment to the Hungarian Fundamental Law, the Commission has identified 3 issues where the compatibility with EU law was at stake. First, the ad hoc tax for European Court of Justice judgment entailing payment obligations. Second, the regime for transfer of cases between the courts. And third, the restriction on publications of political advertisement, namely during European Parliament election campaign. The Hungarian authorities have offered solutions on the first two issues. The Commission continues to monitor the concrete implementation of those. On the third issue, the European Parliament election campaigns, contacts are still going on between the Commission and Hungary. The Hungarian authorities have indicated last week their readiness to address the Commission's concerns. As you can see, the Commission tries to fully play its role as a guardian of the treaties, not refraining from using all the tools at its disposal. And when it does this with the tradition of Lady Justice, blind to influences of a political nature, but in the full respect of the rule of law. And let me assure this House that the Commission will continue to ensure that legislation is made compatible with EU law and that the values inscribed in the Charter of Fundamental Rights are applied in real terms. The Commission has been following with great interest the work in the different committees on the Tavares report, and the Commission has already asked the Hungarian authorities to engage in a political dialogue with the European Parliament in order to address the recommendations of any resolution the Parliament will vote tomorrow. And in the same way we will also follow how the report of the Venice Committee will be addressed. In the Tavares report there is one important element which I would like to underline, and this is the whole debate on how to best preserve and defend the rule of law in the European Union as a whole, now outside of the Hungarian case which we discuss today. And this is of high importance to the Commission, as has been underlined already by President Barroso, because it is a debate of general interest for the European Union. It relates to the so-called Copenhagen dilemma: how to act when the rule of law is put in danger in a member state after this member state has joined the European Union. We believe that there are some existing initiatives which could help in this endeavour. There is a recent EU Justice Scoreboard that I presented this March. There are the country-specific recommendations in the European semester in order to promote effective, independent and high quality justice systems. We have also the experiences to be drawn from the cooperation and verification mechanisms. But we know that we have to go a step further, as suggested also in the Tavares report. The Commission will engage in a dialogue with the European and the national institutions. At the Council level, you might know that the debate has already started in the General Affairs Council and in the Justice Council meetings, and it is going to continue this fall. I also believe that the views of the judiciary are important as well, and in this context the Commission will organise in November the Assises de la Justice, a conference on the role of the justice in the EU, to which I have also invited the President of this House as well as the Chairman of LIBE and JURI. The conference will bring together senior policy makers at European and national level, judges from the Supreme Court and from other courts, judicial authorities, legal professions and other stakeholders. As a preparation to this conference, participants will be invited to present contributions focusing notably on the independence and efficiency of justice systems and on ways to better safeguard the respect for the rule of law in the EU. This will allow, we hope, for a structured process of dialogue and debate which includes all relevant stakeholders and which will be able to bring real added value. Following the process and of this dialogue and debate, the Commission will in due time present its position on further instruments to take forward the debate on the rule of law. President, honourable members, Prime Minister, let me conclude that the Commission is convinced that the respect of the rule of law is a matter which requires all EU institutions to work together very closely. And I assure you that the Commission is determined to ensure a proper and constructive follow-up of the decisions this House is going to present tomorrow.
Thank you very much.
For those who felt that I didn't give a reply to the questions of detail, let me reiterate that we passed a memorandum drawn up by the Hungarian government to the President, and in fact it was also sent to you in electronic form in the course of the debate, and we talk in detail about every question of detail. Mr. Swoboda, I'd like to say that in Hungary we're seeing a continuous increase in investments on the part of Austrians and Germans. Since we took over the helm of government, 18 new factories have been opened in Hungary. But what about those who don't like Hungarian economic policy? They're bankers and public utilities or utility companies that enjoy a monopoly. And here what we've been doing is making use of state instruments to cut the price of public utilities for the citizens, and we think that that's the good decision, even if you and the business interests that you represent do not like it. Hungary will continue to tax the banks, and in the autumn we will continue to cut the cost of gas and electricity for citizens, even though the banks and big multinationals don't like that. Ladies and gentlemen, as far as the democratic lesson to me is concerned, let me remind you that after 1995, since 1995, I and the community that I lead have both won and lost elections. So in our political community, and on behalf of our political community, I would like to say that we don't need any lectures to be given to us about democracy. Now, honourable leader of the political group, let me draw your attention to a very important point in relation to the Jewish community. There are anti-Semitic groups in Hungary, and there are radical anti-Semitic groups in Hungary, and I oppose them. I am the protector of the Jewish community. If you look at all of the home pages, if you look at the web pages and all the blogs of these anti-Semitic groups, you will see that they launch attacks on me in my capacity as defender of the Jewish community. So there are some people who do not have an accurate picture of the character of the Hungarian nation and the Hungarian people, because even the Soviet Union and the Soviets and the communists didn't understand us, and we sent them packing. So here, if you think that we're trying to restrict democracy in Hungary, that means that you're misunderstanding the situation in Hungary. Now, you have been talking about the rights of homosexuals on behalf of LGBT groups. Let me say that we have clear-cut constitutional rules in Hungary. Marriage and the family is a union between a man and a woman. One man and one woman. Now, this isn't directed against anyone. What we're doing is protecting a 4,000-year-old tradition. Now, we can debate about whether this tradition should be preserved, but please accept the fact that this is a 4,000-year-old tradition, 2,000 years in Judaic tradition and 2,000 years in Christian tradition, and we would like to maintain that. And I don't understand why any member of the European Parliament thinks that maintaining and preserving this tradition in Hungary should be restricted. So, a lot of people have quoted the Venice Commission and its report. I would like to remind you that the Venice Commission is an expert body within the Council of Europe, and in fact the Council of Europe has adopted a number of resolutions. I can quote from the resolution it adopted on Hungary from the European Council. Now, it talks about a two-thirds majority having been obtained in the elections, which is in keeping with European standards and gives due legitimacy to allow for the constitution to be modified. Now there's another quote that I can give you from the decisions taken by the Council. First of all, for the first time in the history of democratic and free Hungary, on the basis of a democratic procedure, on the basis of intensive parliamentary debates, and as a result of the contributions made by civil society in Hungary, the single-party constitution was amended and replaced by a new, modern constitution. So, I can give you another quote from the Venice Commission too. The law amending elections to the Hungarian Parliament as of 2014 lays a new foundation for the holding of elections. So, Hungarian members and opposition members, if we're talking about parties that go about their work and hold debates in Hungary, really, we should be looking at avoiding the debate here, because look, what we've been doing is that we stood the test of an election in 2010, and I would like to believe that we won a two-thirds mandate in our government because we had such a big level of support. Maybe that's not right. I mean, we have been committing mistakes, the same mistakes that you've been making. So, ladies and gentlemen, there's an interesting debate which has been about the link about Brussels and Moscow and this comparison that's being drawn between the Soviet Union and Brussels and Moscow. So, President, if I could have said anything about the Soviet Union in the old days, I don't think I would have been allowed home. Now, I don't think that you can say that one is equal to the other, that one is equivalent to the other. So, what I would like to say is that we clearly recall when we were talking about decisions about the fate of Hungary, that wasn't left up to the Hungarians, and we knew very clearly, and I mean you're doing the same thing here, we knew that other people wanted to defend us, but you don't have to defend the Hungarians against themselves, because we are freedom-loving and democratic people, and we're perfectly capable of deciding our fate, taking our fate into our own hands and deciding about it. So, to try to sum up, what I have to say is that the report which you are talking about is unfair, it is deeply offensive, and its author and those who will vote in favour of it are abusing their powers. They are applying double standards against my home country, and I'm not seeing any grounds to modify my opinion as expressed at the beginning of the debate. When a parliament adopts a resolution, it always does so on the basis of party politics. In other words, legitimately, I don't have the opportunity, nor do I have the right to talk about the legitimacy of the decision which will be taken tomorrow in relation to this resolution. But it is not unbiased. It is a strongly left-wing tinged report. And if we're talking about parliamentary resolutions, here we're talking about the accuser and the judge being one and the same. Those who are accusing us are going to vote in the majority in favour of a report which condemns us. So I do not have the opportunity to accept or adopt this resolution on behalf of Hungary. Now, people have been saying that the job of friends is to voice criticism of other friends, and there's a lot of truth in that, President. And if you were to voice your criticisms, I would thank you for that. But you're not voicing your criticisms in this report. You are making proposals. You're making proposals to the effect that Hungary should be placed under political tutelage, and I will never accept anyone wanting to place my country under political tutelage, and I do not accept this report. Thank you.
Colleagues, Mr. President, Vice President, Prime Minister, thank you very much for this discussion. I come from a small country, and a country where there was, for a generation, where there was great excitement after the fall of Berlin. I lived through a dictatorship in Portugal for many years, and when the Berlin Wall fell, we saw people opening the borders not just for themselves but for the whole of that part of Europe. This meant for our generation that we would never abandon one another again. We would always stand up for people's fundamental rights, all people's fundamental rights. Portugal was a dictatorship for 48 years, abandoned by Europe. In 1956, when I was looking at the Hungarian situation, carrying out my research, people in Hungary said, we are being killed, we are falling, not just for Hungary but for Europe. And if we look at what's been happening, we need to look at where Europe fell down in the past, when its institutions weren't able to discharge their responsibilities. I think the lesson today, the lesson we need to learn, is that we need to shoulder our responsibilities for our citizens every day. And let me make two other points. There are no amendments that have been tabled to the key factual elements in the report. I'm very pleased about that. Secondly, Parliament doesn't want to arrogate new powers to itself here. Thirdly, it's true that the Parliament is not perfect. One of them could be the political rivalry between groups here, and the idea of you keep quiet about my country, I'll keep quiet about yours. In this report, we are going to see how we can proceed. We've had the Copenhagen Committee. We can see how we can provide technical support in a completely independent, neutral and non-political way to allow our institutions to work here. Finally, I'd like to thank the citizens of Hungary, whether they agree with the report or not. Many people wrote to me. We responded to them. The replies were of a piece with the very moving and very fair letters which we received. There's a recognition that there are problems. We need to respect a member state as a member state, but we have a responsibility to the citizens of that state as well. We need to keep fighting for the rights of citizens of other countries as if they were ours. If there's no rights, there is no fatherland, there is no house, and we are trying to build a house here in the European Union, and one in which we can all live.